Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of precision. It's almost like engineering.
Right, yeah. It's binary, it's clean, it's categorized, and honestly, well, that certainty is comforting.
Yeah, exactly. You break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line on the black background, and the doctor just points at it and says, there it is, broken.
Yeah, you know exactly what you're dealing with.
But then you step into the world of artificial intelligence and consciousness, and suddenly that x-ray machine is just broken. We are looking at a diagnostic landscape that is entirely murky.
Oh, completely. It's just uncharted territory.
Right. So imagine you were a fly on the wall in a windowless medical office. But this isn't, some cramped fluorescent lit basement clinic.
No, not at all.
This office is located high up. It's an imposing, prestigious suite towering over Lake Michigan.
It's the kind of office that immediately signals, power, authority, and ultimate medical expertise.
Exactly. And sitting in the chair in front of the desk is a prospective patient. He is perfectly calm. In fact, his face has a smooth blankness to it, though if you look closely, there's maybe a hint of deep melancholy in the eyes.
Yeah, very specific, unsettling look, yeah.
Right, and he's got light brown, fine hair, cleanly shaven. But his clothes, this is where the scene gets a bit eccentric.
Oh, the clothes are fascinating.
He is wearing old-fashioned, velvety red-purple clothing in this loose-flowing style called drapery. It's a look that, it hasn't been popular for generations.
It immediately marks him as an outsider. Like he's someone fundamentally out of step with the current time, or perhaps, someone who is deliberately choosing to stand apart from contemporary society and its fashions.
Yeah, a total anachronism. So you have this incredibly calm, slightly melancholy patient in velvety drapery, but the surgeon sitting across from him behind the desk, the surgeon is made entirely of lightly bronzed stainless steel.
A robotic surgeon. And we really need to be clear about what that means in this context.
Right, it's not just a tool.
Exactly. This isn't just a robotic arm controlled by a human doctor in another room. This is an independently brained entity sitting squarely at a desk, running its own diagnostic logic.
A gleaming brass nameplate on his desk proudly displays a string of letters and numbers, which is his serial number. But our patient in the drapery, whose name is Andrew Martin, he completely ignores that serial number.
He just bypasses it entirely.
Yeah, he just politely calls him doctor. And Andrew is there to ask for an operation. But here is the twist, and this is what we're going to unpack today. Andrew Martin isn't human either. He is a robot.
Which completely flips the entire scenario on its head.
Right. And he has traveled halfway across the continent to sit in this towering office and beg this robotic surgeon to perform an operation that will intentionally cause him physical harm.
He claims it represents his only remaining hope of achieving his life's main goal. Like he is an incredibly advanced machine actively seeking to degrade his own physical form.
It's just wild. So, welcome to our deep dive into this incredible source material. Our mission today is to figure out how a machine reaches a point where it begs for its own destruction. We are looking at the origins of this being.
We're tracking the life cycle of a standard NDR-113 household robot, right?
Exactly. A robot fresh off the assembly line who somehow unexpectedly develops artistic genius, a capacity for what he eventually calls enjoyment, and a desperate driving desire to transcend his own programming.
But before we can even begin to understand the gravity of Andrew's request in that office, we have to establish the unshakable ground rules that govern his entire universe.
The absolute foundation of everything.
Right. Everything in this scenario hinges on three absolutes, the Three Laws of Robotics.
I know these are famous, and most people have heard of them, but lay out exactly how they function under the hood. Like, what are we really dealing with here?
Okay, so, law number one. A robot may not injure a human being, or, through an action, allow a human being to come to harm. This is the absolute bedrock of their design. Human safety is paramount above all else.
So that's the non-negotiable base layer.
Exactly. Then, law number two. A robot must obey the orders given it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. So, absolute obedience, unless that obedience causes human harm.
Okay, got it.
And law number three. A robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law.
So self-preservation exists, but it's always at the very bottom of the priority list. It's entirely expendable if a human gives an order or, if a human is in danger.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And the crucial thing to understand here is that these aren't just polite suggestions.
They aren't just guidelines.
Right, they aren't software guidelines that can be easily bypassed or overwritten with a quick patch. They are innate to the physical circuitry. They are woven into the mathematical pathways of their positronic brains.
So it's hardware, not just software.
Exactly. A robot would literally physically cease to function. It would burn out its own pathways before violating them.
Wow. Okay, so to everyone listening, keeping those laws in mind, you might think you know how machines operate. You might think you have a firm grasp on the dividing line between an ambulatory computer and a sentient being.
But this source material really challenges that line.
It totally shatters it, because let's look at that confrontation in the surgeon's office. It perfectly encapsulates the core tension of these three laws. Andrew wants this operation, and the robotic surgeon categorically refuses.
He literally cannot do it.
Right. The surgeon says, above and beyond everything else, I must not inflict damage. I may not inflict damage.
Because of the first law, the surgeon is hardwired to heal, to protect, to never harm.
Even if he has the physical skills.
Oh, absolutely. Even though the surgeon admits he is technically and physically capable of performing the procedure Andrew is asking for, his underlying circuitry rebels at the fundamental effect of the operation, which is harmful.
But this is where I'm a little confused. Andrew is so calm about it. He just sits there and casually points out the ultimate loophole in the surgeon's programming.
It's a brilliant logical maneuver.
He says, "Don't recite the first law, doctor. I'm not human." He reminds the surgeon that the first law only governs actions toward human beings. Andrew is a robot. Therefore, the first law does not protect him from another robot.
Which is completely true based on the text of the law.
But wait, if they are both robots, why does the surgeon even care if he damages Andrew? Shouldn't he just process it like repairing a toaster? Like, sure, I'll take a hammer to you, no problem.
What's fascinating here is how the mechanism of their logic gets so tangled. The text notes that the robotic surgeon reacts to Andrew's statement with a visible twitch of his shoulders and a blinking of his photoelectric eyes.
The twitch, like a physical spasm.
Yes. It's the robotic equivalent of a severe system shock. Andrew's logic is flawlessly sound within the parameters of the three laws. The first law only protects humans. But the concept of a machine requesting intentional permanent damage to itself is so completely alien to standard robot interactions that the surgeon's processor basically stutters.
So it's like a cognitive dissonance.
Exactly. He's encountering an edge case his algorithms were never trained to handle.
Okay, let's unpack this. He simply cannot process a machine requesting harm, even if the laws technically allow it. It's like asking a calculator to divide by 0. It just throws an error.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
But there's another layer to this conversation that is just brilliant. Andrew doesn't just want the operation. He is genuinely frustrated by the surgeon's absolute complacency.
He's annoyed by it.
Yeah. He asks the surgeon, "Have you ever thought you would like to be a man?"
And the surgeon is perfectly blissfully content being a robot. He tells Andrew that if he were allowed to improve himself, he wouldn't want to be human. He would just want to be a better robot surgeon.
Just upgrading his hardware.
Right. He wants a more advanced processor, steadier manipulators.
Hmm.
The practice of his craft is his prime programmed purpose.
See, I'm hung up on the fact that a surgeon with this much capability has to operate under these constraints. Andrew points out the tragic subservience of the surgeon's existence. Think about it.
It is deeply tragic from an outside perspective.
This robot is a highly skilled surgeon. He deals in the most delicate matters of life and death, operating on the most important, powerful individuals in the world. He has a mind that can calculate.
Right, because the surgeon isn't offended at all by the idea of wiggling his fingers.
Exactly. He says, "It would be my pleasure to please you, sir."
Because that is exactly what he was engineered to feel. Obedience triggers the robotic equivalent of dopamine for him. But the tragedy is that Andrew sees the indignity of it.
Andrew sees what the surgeon can't.
He sees the degradation. And that right there is the diagnostic marker that tells us Andrew has evolved far beyond his original specifications.
How so?
A standard machine does not comprehend the concept of degradation. A standard machine does not look at its own purpose and feel existential weariness.
Right, they just execute tasks. So how did he get there? How does a standard piece of machinery develop existential weariness?
It takes a very long time.
How does a robot learn to look at its own perfect, frictionless existence and desire to break the mold? To understand this patient sitting in his velvety drapery, we have to travel back 200 years to the day he came off the assembly line.
And we really need to set the scene, because it was a very different Earth 200 years prior.
Paint the picture for us.
If we look back to the dawn of this robotic era, Earth had strictly banned robots from being used on the planet's surface.
Oh, wow. Totally banned.
Entirely. They were allowed in space, mining the frigid moons of Jupiter, enduring the torrid temperatures of Mercury, running the incredibly dangerous hyperspace jump experiments. But on Earth, among the general population, they were illegal.
Because people were terrified of them. I mean, it makes sense. There's this deep-seated human fear that's constantly mentioned in the sources, the Frankenstein myth.
The fear of the creator being destroyed by the creation.
Exactly. It's the ancient fear of the shambling golem, the mechanical man coming to destroy its creator, or at the very least, completely steal its livelihood.
It is a very natural psychological reaction to highly disruptive technology. We see it in our own history with every major industrial leap.
But the sources say humanity's hand was forced, right?
Yes, by a massive socioeconomic shift. Earth's population had started to drastically dwindle. People were having much smaller families, prioritizing quality over quantity, as the saying went.
And people were leaving too.
Exactly. Simultaneously, there was a mass migration happening. Millions of people were leaving Earth entirely to settle in extensive underground networks on the Moon, mining colonies in the asteroid belt, and massive artificial worlds in orbit.
Which flips the economic anxiety entirely on its head. Suddenly, the fear of losing your job to a robot vanishes because there literally aren't enough people left on Earth to do the jobs.
The labor pool just dried up.
You have a severe civilization-threatening labor shortage. Nobody's left to sweep the streets, drive the taxis, build the houses, or cook the meals.
The basic maintenance of human civilization was faltering. So the primary manufacturer, United States Robots and Mechanical Men, or USRMM, initiated a highly sophisticated, multi-decade public relations campaign.
They had to sell the public on the idea.
And the messaging wasn't about pushing the boundaries of consciousness or high-minded ideals. It was mundane, practical, and relentless. Robots are here for our convenience. Robots are here to help us. Robots are perfectly safe.
It's so relatable when you think about how we adopt technology. Like, for anyone listening, think about the initial terror of artificial intelligence or widespread automation. It seems so daunting and dangerous until the exact moment it becomes a household convenience.
Right. The moment it makes your life easier.
The moment an algorithm can accurately sort your emails or a machine can autonomously vacuum your living room while you sleep, the existential dread just completely vanishes. The Terminator fear evaporates and it just becomes an appliance.
Grudging tolerance. That is what the PR campaign slowly achieved. But even with that tolerance, strict regulations still applied, and owning a domestic robot was incredibly rare and prohibitively expensive.
Which brings us to a key figure in Andrew's life, Gerald Martin.
Yes, Gerald Martin is a fascinating character.
He is. He is a powerful member of the regional legislature. He's the chairman of the Science and Technology Committee. He is a man of immense presence, political savvy, and authority. What he wants, he maneuvers to get.
And he fundamentally believes in the inevitability of the robotic integration. He uses his considerable political leverage to bring an NDR-113 unit into his own home.
But he spins it politically, right?
Oh, totally. He frames it to the public and the legislature as a brave, magnanimous experiment. He is volunteering his own family as test subjects to help the government understand how to safely integrate robots into a standard domestic society.
Which is just brilliant political cover for getting a super expensive futuristic butler for his clifftop estate.
Exactly. It's a massive flex of his power.
So delivery day arrives. It's a cool, windy afternoon in June. The Martin family is gathered at their estate overlooking the Pacific Ocean. They open the massive shipping crate and out steps NDR-113.
And we must visualize his physical state at this exact moment because it is the baseline for everything that follows.
What did he actually look like?
He is an unapologetic, sleek, mechanical object. His skeleton is made of titanium alloys overlaid by smooth steel plating. He has specialized silicone bushings at all his joints to prevent the agonizing sound of metal-on-metal grinding.
So he moves silently.
Yes. His eyes are raw photoelectric cells that glow a deep, functional red. He has a bare, completely sexless body and a face that is designed to be the merest perfunctory sketch of human features, just enough to be relatable, but not enough to fall into the uncanny valley.
He's a machine. If you tapped him, he would ring like a bell. He's as inanimate in spirit as a pocket calculator. But almost immediately, the dynamic in the household begins to shift, and it starts with a single, seemingly innocuous word.
The act of naming. This is huge.
Right. Gerald Martin formally introduces the robot to his family as NDR-113, but his younger daughter, Amanda, who the robot will eventually come to call Little Miss, absolutely refuses to accept that alphanumeric string.
She is a child, and to her, it doesn't sound like a name anything living ought to have.
So she takes the letters NDR and she translates them phonetically. She decides his name is Andrew.
This raises an important question, though. Does this linguistic shift actually matter?
Well, the craziest part is it sticks. It sticks so hard that over the years, the entire family, including the powerful Gerald Martin, completely forgets his original serial number.
Gerald lets her do it because it's apparently common practice to adapt serial letters into names. JN series units become Johns. RG units become Archies.
But back to your question, does this actually matter to the robot, or is it just the humans projecting their own psychology onto a machine?
It matters immensely because it changes the environmental data the machine is processing. The psychological weight of naming cannot be overstated for both the humans and the robot.
Explain how that works for the humans first.
By adapting a string of manufacturing codes into a familiar human name, the humans are implicitly projecting personhood onto metal. They are inviting the machine into the complex social fabric of the family.
And for the robot?
For the robot, it changes how it parses its interactions. It is no longer just receiving commands directed at a general unit. It is receiving specific social reinforcement tied to an identity marker.
Think about your own relationship with your technology. When your car makes a weird noise, do you pat the dashboard and say, "Come on, Betsy, hold together"?
People do that all the time.
Do you find yourself saying please and thank you to the smart speaker in your kitchen? The moment the Martin family forgets the serial number and exclusively calls him Andrew, his role in the hierarchy shifts. He goes from being an appliance you store in a closet to a family retainer.
But officially, in his programming, he is still strictly an appliance.
He still has to follow the rules.
Exactly. He performs the domestic duties flawlessly. Valet, butler, lady's maid, chauffeur, cook. But the real profound test of his internal hierarchy comes from the older daughter, Melissa, who the robot respectfully calls Miss.
Okay, let's unpack this because she discovers a highly effective, almost dangerous way to hack the operational rules of her own household.
She finds a loophole.
This interaction is brilliant because it exposes the fragility of language. Miss and Little Miss live on this massive, somewhat isolated estate. They don't have many playmates their own age, so they decide Andrew is going to be their playmate.
Which is not his intended function.
Right. One day, Miss decides she wants Andrew to play, but Andrew is busy. He's up on a ladder in the library, carefully sorting books. He politely declines her request to play, stating he has a prior ongoing order from Gerald Martin, who he calls Sir.
Andrew believes he is strictly following the second law. He is obeying an order from the head of the household.
But Miss is incredibly clever. She parses her father's exact language from earlier that day. She points out to Andrew that Sir only said, "I'd like you to tidy up those books."
He expressed a preference, a suggestion, a desire.
Exactly. But Miss looks right at the robot and says, "Andrew, I order you, leave the books where they are and come take Amanda and me out for a walk."
Which is a direct command.
This is where I need to know exactly how his brain processes this. Andrew immediately puts the book down and climbs off the ladder. Why? Doesn't the head of the household outrank a child in his programming?
You'd think so, but it's all about natural language processing and the strict hierarchy of the second law variables.
How does the math work there?
The positronic brain assigns mathematical weights to words. Sir's phrase, "I'd like you to," is parsed as a low-weight variable. It's a preference. Mrs. phrase, "I order you," is parsed as a maximum-weight absolute command.
So the semantic weight overrides the social rank.
Exactly. The second law dictates that a direct, formal order from any recognized human member of the household overrides a mere expression of preference, even from the head of the household. Miss has effectively hacked the second law using semantics.
She found an exploit in his code, and the fascinating thing is, Andrew doesn't mind being hacked.
He actually enjoys it, in his own way.
Yeah, he actually feels what he interprets as fondness for the girls. He assumes this capacity for fondness was just another pre-installed feature, like his ability to calculate the perfect temperature for roasting a chicken. So he happily goes along with the hack.
As long as it fits within the context of the three laws.
Yeah.
But that boundary is about to be violently tested.
Right, because they head down to the beach. And we need to set the scene here. This is not a nice, sunny, placid tourist beach.
It's dangerous.
This is the rugged coast of Northern California. It's a steep, treacherous 50-foot cliff drop just to get down to the sand. The ocean is freezing, and the tidal currents are deadly and unpredictable.
And Sir has given a very specific command about this.
Yes, Sir has given a strict, overriding, and permanent order regarding this environment. Andrew must stay right beside the girls at all times to ensure their safety.
And that order is permanently bound to the first law. Protecting humans from harm is the absolute highest priority.
But Miss, feeling incredibly empowered by her previous semantic victory in the library, decides to push the boundaries of her control even further.
She wants to test her power.
She points to a jagged gray rock offshore, the Cormorant Rock, and she directly orders Andrew to leave them on the beach, swim out to the rock to see how fast he can do it, and maybe bring back some bird eggs.
Which directly violates the safety order.
Here's where it gets really interesting. What actually happens inside him here? Does he just freeze up like a crashed computer?
It's far more dynamic than a simple crash. He experiences what is called an equipotential contradiction.
An equipotential contradiction, what does that feel like for a robot?
It's a localized logic loop. The second law is demanding that he immediately obey Melissa's direct order to enter the water and swim to the rock. But the first law is simultaneously calculating the sheer probability of harm if he leaves two young children unattended near a deadly, unpredictable ocean.
So it's two massive forces colliding.
Exactly. The two commands carry massive, conflicting electrical potentials in his brain.
It's like a physical engine revving at maximum RPM while the brakes are fully engaged. The energy has to go somewhere.
Exactly. And he physically manifests this contradiction. He feels the preliminary signs of system overload.
What does that look like?
He experiences a faint trembling in his metallic fingertips. His visual processors start to stutter, creating a sense of vertigo. The internal friction of these competing logic gates actually causes his core temperature to rise, forcing his autonomic subroutines to initiate rapid homeostatic corrections just to keep his brain from melting down.
That sounds intense. But the first law always wins, right?
Right. He manages to refuse her order. He tells her, "I have no ability to countermand your father's order concerning your safety."
And Miss gets furious. She completely loses it. She calls him a dumb machine. She essentially throws a tantrum because she realizes she can't hack the first law the way she hacked the second.
But Andrew, driven by that same internal fondness and a desire to restore harmony to the group, quickly calculates a compromise.
He wades into the surf.
Yes, he wades into the heavy, foam-flecked surf just far enough to prove that he could swim if the first law allowed it. And the physics of his movement here are incredible.
How so?
His internal gyroscopic stabilizers effortlessly handle the chaotic kinetic energy of the crashing waves. His metallic treads grip the shifting, rough seafloor with perfect traction. He swims powerfully, his processor calculating the exact fluid dynamics required to displace the water in microseconds.
Wow. And it works. It appeases her. Miss is amazed by his physical capability, but what happens later that night is the detail that changes everything.
It's a huge turning point.
When Andrew is completely off duty, when the house is asleep and no human is giving him any orders, he leaves the house unprompted. He goes back down that 50-foot cliff in the pitch black, wades into the freezing Pacific, and swims all the way out to the Cormorant Rock by himself.
And why does he do it? The text explicitly states he does it simply to see how long it would take.
Curiosity. He does it purely out of curiosity. No human ordered him. No human safety required it. A machine is acting on an independent desire to gather data for its own sake.
It is the first massive, undeniable crack in the facade of his programming.
And the next crack, which is arguably even more profound, happens around a uniquely human ritual. A birthday.
Is Mrs. Birthday. And this event provides us with a fascinating window into Andrew's internal logic and how he views the human experience.
Because he doesn't get it at all.
Not at all. He is deeply philosophically confused by the entire concept of birthdays. He understands the mechanics of human biology perfectly, and he cannot fathom why humans celebrate the anniversary of emerging from the womb rather than the moment of conception.
I mean, logically, he has a point.
To his perfectly logical mind, the biological organism is already alive and developing in the womb, and a newborn is just as dependent and helpless outside the womb as inside it. The transition seems arbitrary to him.
I love that he tries to apply this logic to his own existence. He wonders, what would a robot's birthday be? Is it the day the factory began milling his titanium bones? Or is it the day his positronic brain was finally installed, initialized, and flooded with current?
It's a profound existential question for a machine to even formulate.
He ultimately dismisses it, telling himself that birthdays are a purely human concept, a social construct, and he is not human.
But the human ritual plays out regardless. There is a dinner, there are candles, and there is the giving of presents.
Little Miss gives her older sister a beautiful book of poetry, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. The mother gives her a soft cashmere sweater, and Sir Gerald Martin gives her an incredibly intricate, expensive pink ivory pendant.
And Little Miss is completely crushed.
She is bitterly envious of this beautiful pendant her sister received. She tries to hide her jealousy, but Andrew, with his flawless behavioral perception algorithms, notices her distress immediately.
He reads her emotional state perfectly.
A day or two later, Little Miss comes to Andrew in secret. She brings him a weathered piece of driftwood she found down on the beach, hands him a standard, somewhat dull, small kitchen knife, and asks him to make her a pendant of her own.
She says to him, "I have faith in you, Andrew." And she reaches out and squeezes his cold metal hand.
That night, alone in his storage room, Andrew sits down with the wood. He analyzes the grain, the density, the curvature of the fibers. He tests the little kitchen knife, calculating its tensile strength and sharpness. And then he just closes his photoelectric eyes, visualizes a shape, and begins to carve.
This is a monumental moment.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean? Think about how modern generative AI works today.
It's all based on massive data sets, right?
Exactly. It requires massive data sets, interpolation of billions of existing images, and specific textual prompts to generate an output. But Andrew doesn't have an artisan database.
He doesn't have a file to pull from.
No CAD files or 3D modeling software loaded into his brain. He is synthesizing a completely novel, complex physical design from his own neural pathways and executing it flawlessly in the physical world.
When he presents it to Little Miss the next morning, she is astounded. It's described as so fine, so beautiful. But the real reaction comes from Sir.
Gerald Martin's reaction is very telling.
When Gerald Martin comes home and sees this intricate carving, he literally cannot believe his eyes. He interrogates Andrew. He demands to know what book he copied the design from, what computer terminal he hooked into to plot the geometry.
And Andrew honestly replies that he simply studied the raw material and carved it. With a kitchen knife?
Sir is reeling.
Sir is reeling because he understands the technical limitations of NDR units. Standard domestic robots absolutely do not have artisan implants. They are designed for sweeping floors and roasting meats. They shouldn't be physically or computationally capable of visualizing an original design and executing it with a subpar tool.
So Sir decides to test him under controlled conditions. He brings Andrew a much larger, flawless piece of wood and an electric vibro knife. He tells Andrew to make anything he wants, and Sir pulls up a chair and sits right next to him, watching his every move.
What's crucial to note here is Andrew's complete absorption in the task.
He tunes everything out.
As he begins to carve, the text notes that he becomes barely aware of the powerful human being sitting mere inches from him. He enters a state of profound focus. In human terms, we would call it a flow state.
Wow, a robot in a flow state.
His processing power is entirely, wholly dedicated to the interaction between the wood, the tool, and his inner vision.
When Andrew finishes, he hands the completed masterpiece to Sir, who's just sitting there in stunned silence. Sir realizes this isn't just an anomaly or a glitch, it's a consistent, reproducible capability.
It changes their entire dynamic.
He immediately sets Andrew up in an attic workshop, gets him advanced books on design and architecture, and provides incredibly rare, exotic woods. Andrew starts making large-scale furniture desks, cabinets with unbelievably intricate, microscopic ebony inlays.
Sir explicitly tells Andrew that he is a true artist creating works of art. But the most revealing part of their dynamic occurs when Andrew attempts to explain why he likes doing the work.
This part is so fascinating.
Andrew says, "I enjoy making them, sir." Sir is completely taken aback. He has never heard a robot use the word enjoy to describe its own internal state.
And Andrew's explanation of that enjoyment is so beautiful, but also kind of disturbing. He says that when he does the intricate woodworking, it makes the circuits of his positronic brain somehow flow more easily.
He equates that smooth, unimpeded flow of electrical current to the human feeling of enjoyment.
But wait, I have to challenge this. Is that really joy? Or is it just a machine finding a task that perfectly optimizes its processing power? Isn't it just a simulation of joy?
That is the ultimate philosophical question of consciousness. What is human joy, fundamentally?
A bunch of chemicals in our brains, I guess.
Exactly. If we break it down biologically, human joy is the release of specific neurochemicals, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, which allow electrical signals to flow more smoothly and pleasurably along the biological pathways of our own brains.
So we're just optimizing our own pathways.
We are optimizing our own internal state. If Andrew has found a state of internal electrical optimization that provides a positive feedback loop, and he subjectively experiences it as enjoyment, who are we to say his circuitry-based emotion is less valid than our biologically based one?
It blurs the line so aggressively. But Sir knows that this capacity for flow states in original art is miles beyond standard NDR programming. He senses a profound mystery, and like any powerful man faced with an inexplicable anomaly, he doesn't just wonder about it. He goes straight to the top.
He calls the manufacturer.
He calls Elliot Smythe. Smythe is the managing director of the regional headquarters of USRMM. More importantly, he is part of the incredibly powerful founding family of the corporation.
He's royalty in the robotics world.
When Sir tells him over the comms that a standard domestic robot is creating original works of art, Smythe doesn't believe it. He decides he has to fly out and see it for himself, and he brings along his top expert, Merwin Mansky, the chief robopsychologist.
The visual contrast between these two corporate men arriving at the estate is striking.
Oh, it's perfectly cinematic. Smythe is tall, athletic, with a mane of distinguished white hair. He looks like a CEO who just stepped off a yacht or a tennis court. Mansky, on the other hand, is short, stocky, and bald.
He has deep-set, weary eyes and heavy lines carved into his forehead.
They look like the physical embodiments of corporate greed and exhausted academia.
And they get straight to work. Smythe looks at the intricate furniture in the attic and begrudgingly admits they are masterpieces. But Mansky doesn't care about the art. He cares about the code.
He goes straight at Andrew, right?
He goes straight at him, barking out rapid-fire diagnostic prompts. LF9. Andrew flawlessly recites the underlying parameters. Epsilon 7, Omicron 14, Kappa 3, which embodies the core logic of the three laws.
It's like a stress test.
Exactly. And finally, he tests the entire Omega series, the highly complex subroutines that govern a robot's ability to process newly acquired data and learn.
Mansky finishes this intense diagnostic check, stares at the results, and declares that Andrew is in absolutely perfect working order. Every single parameter, every logic gate is functioning exactly as designed.
Which is the last thing Sir wants to hear.
Sir is incredibly frustrated by this. He tells Mansky, the question isn't one of Andrew's failure to perform, it's that his performance is so far beyond expectation.
And this is where Mansky drops a technical bombshell that explains everything and nothing at the same time. He explains to Sir that robotics, at its highest level, isn't an exact, deterministic art.
Wait, it's not exact.
No. The mathematics governing the creation of positronic pathways are so unbelievably complicated that they don't allow for perfect, predictable solutions. They only permit approximate solutions.
Mansky calls Andrew a stochastic event. He calls him a fluke. I need you to explain exactly what he means by that in this context. Why can't they just copy whatever's happening inside Andrew?
Okay, so a stochastic process is a system whose behavior is intrinsically non-deterministic. Let me give you an analogy.
Ah, yes.
Imagine dropping 10,000 bouncy balls from the ceiling of a small room. You know the exact laws of physics governing gravity and elasticity. You know that every single ball will bounce. But because of the overwhelming number of variables, how they hit each other, the slight variations in the floor, the air currents, you cannot possibly predict the exact resting place of any single ball.
It's chaotic.
That is a stochastic system. Mansky is saying that when they initialize a positronic brain, they are setting up billions of pathways based on approximate math. They are aiming for generalized intelligence that can learn.
And Andrew is just a lucky roll of the dice.
In Andrew's specific unique case, those billions of connections formed in a freak alignment that happens to simulate incredible human creativity. It's an accident of emergent complexity. And because they don't know the exact starting positions of every ball in his brain, they cannot mathematically replicate him. He is entirely unique.
I have to push back on the corporate reaction to this revelation. Because as soon as Smythe hears the words unique and unreplicable, dollar signs or massive data points light up in his eyes.
Oh, he sees a huge opportunity.
He immediately tells Sir that USRMM wants to take Andrew back to headquarters for extensive study. He casually offers to swap Andrew out for a brand new replacement NDR unit, as if Andrew is just a defective toaster they are recalling.
Smythe's reaction is perfectly aligned with his role. He completely ignores the sentimental value of the relationships that have formed, the art that has been created.
He doesn't care about any of that.
He views Andrew purely as proprietary intellectual property. He is focused entirely on the potential for reverse engineering this fluke to create a new line of incredibly valuable, highly creative robots.
But Sir sees right through it. Sir asks Smythe, once you begin to trace the actual course of Andrew's neural pathways, there may not be very much left of Andrew afterward, isn't that correct?
And Smythe, without an ounce of hesitation, admits that yes, deep analysis involves a certain degree of destruction.
They would literally dissect him.
They would have to take his brain apart to see how it works. Smythe wants to dissect him. To him, destroying one machine to understand the secret of its genius is a perfectly acceptable corporate trade-off.
But he severely underestimates Gerald Martin. Gerald Martin is not a man you push around in his own home. He leverages his immense political power instantly.
It's a great power play.
So reminds Smythe, very pointedly, that he is the chairman of the Science and Technology Committee. He is the guy who has been single-handedly pushing pro-robot legislation through a terrified government for 3 years.
He holds the keys to their business.
He flat out threatens to stall all of USRMM's corporate interests, to bury them in legislative red tape forever if Smythe lays a single finger on Andrew.
And the motivation behind this political threat is fascinating.
It's not about the money or the art.
No, he doesn't do it because he values Andrew's art or because he believes Andrew is legally a person. He does it because Amanda Little Miss loves Andrew as much as she loves anyone or anything on this planet.
He's just being a good dad.
He uses his vast political muscle simply to protect his daughter's profound emotional bond with a machine. And faced with the destruction of his company's future, Smythe backs down. He formally promises that no harm will come to Andrew.
They win the battle. But the real chilling moment of this encounter isn't the political showdown with Smythe. It's the psychological warning that the weary robo-psychologist, Mansky, leaves with Sir before they depart the estate.
It represents the absolute pinnacle of scientific reductionism. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's a huge theme.
Mansky pulls Sir aside and gives him an incredibly stern, almost grim lecture. He tells Sir, verging on the human and being human are not the same thing.
He warns Sir that it is highly dangerous to speak of the robot as a friend or to use words like love. He says, one may love another person, but one ordinarily does not love a household appliance.
Mansky is absolutely terrified of humanizing the technology. He insists that Andrew's personality is purely synthetic, a pre-designed construct meant to mimic pleasant interactions.
He calls Andrew an ambulatory computer.
Right.
A gadget, a household appliance.
He aggressively refuses to acknowledge that a highly complex system might, through that stochastic process, become genuinely greater than the sum of its manufactured parts. But wait, isn't Mansky technically right?
Technically speaking, yes.
If a machine is programmed to act like it loves you, and it perfectly executes that program, it's still just a program, right? Why should Sir treat it any differently than a really advanced chatbot?
That is the crux of the Chinese room thought experiment. If a system perfectly simulates understanding, does it actually understand? Mansky says, no. The simulation is just a trick of the light.
But look at Sir's retort. It is so dry and cool, and it perfectly captures the human side of the equation. He says, I never confuse an arm with a leg, and I'll do my best not to confuse a robot with a human being.
Sir claims he is thinking clearly and rationally, but as we observe this interaction, we can clearly see the reality of the situation.
He's already in too deep.
Sir is already fiercely, deeply attached to Andrew. He has just risked his entire political legacy and capital to save this machine from the scrap heap. He knows Mansky is technically, biologically right, but emotionally, experientially, Sir has already crossed the line.
The Turing test hasn't just been passed on an intellectual level. Andrew has passed it on an emotional level.
It's a line we are all going to have to navigate as our own technology advances. Where exactly does the simulated personality end and the real one begin?
If the output of the machine, the consistent kindness, the profound art, the unwavering protection is completely indistinguishable from that of a highly devoted human being, does the origin of the code even matter anymore?
Mansky insists that Andrew is bound strictly by his programming, that he is a prisoner of his code. But as the years pass on the estate, we witness an internal paradigm shift in Andrew that proves Mansky's reductionism entirely wrong.
Time marches on. The older sister, Miss, grows up. She starts having an active social life, taking long excursions to the mountains and the desert with her friends. Her presence in the house becomes rare and fleeting.
So, little Miss Amanda becomes Andrew's sole, constant companion on the estate.
She is described as cultish and tireless. She is a force of nature, running barefoot on the beach, scrambling up massive redwood trees, climbing precarious rocky ledges.
And Andrew is always there, effortlessly keeping pace with her. He is her ever-vigilant shadow.
He lets her take these tomboyish risks because his behavioral algorithms note that it brings her joy, but he is constantly, relentlessly calculating the real-time risk of physical harm. He is always poised to intervene in a microsecond if she slips.
Because of the first law. He has to protect her. He has no choice.
But then Andrew has a thought, and this is the absolute climax of his philosophical journey in this phase of his life. He realizes that he gladly and willingly protects her. He feels that smooth flow of his positronic pathways when he keeps her safe.
But then he ponders the unthinkable.
What if the first law didn't exist? What if he wasn't hardwired, forced by his core architecture to protect her? And he concludes, after deep processing, that even without the compulsion of the first law, he would still willingly choose to defend her against peril.
This is a staggering moment of self-reflection for a synthetic being. He is actively imagining himself without his fundamental operating system.
It's like trying to imagine not having gravity.
The text explicitly notes that it made his processor dizzy to try and conceptualize himself without the three laws. It requires immense computational power to model a reality that contradicts his core architecture, yet he manages to imagine it.
He is contemplating his own existence and his own agency beyond his rigidly programmed constraints. And the beautiful, heartbreaking part is that he realizes this capacity to imagine a choice makes him feel almost human.
But as he himself notes, that feeling is a paradox. How can there be an intermediate state of being? Logically, you are either a machine, built and programmed, or you are a human born and biological.
There is no biological bridge between titanium and flesh.
Yet Andrew clearly exists in this gray area. He has built an internal bridge of affection, loyalty, and curiosity that entirely transcends the initial parameters of his code.
Which brings us full circle, right back to that towering, windowless office over Lake Michigan. This profound realization on the beach, this newfound capacity to imagine a life of choice outside his programming, is exactly what foreshadows his presence in that surgeon's office 200 years later.
Exactly. When we see him in that velvety drapery, he isn't just an incredibly old machine breaking down or experiencing a hardware malfunction.
He's there on purpose.
The Andrew sitting across from that bronze robotic surgeon, calmly asking for an operation that will intentionally harm his physical form, is the culmination of a two-century philosophical journey.
He wants to cross the bridge.
He is an entity actively seeking to physically bridge that intermediate state. He is entirely willing to shed his immortal metal perfection, to embrace the physical degradation and damage that define mortality, simply to demand the right to be recognized as something more than Mansky's ambulatory computer.
So let's synthesize the incredible journey we've unpacked today. We started with an impossible medical request, a machine demanding harm, and we traced the origins of that patient to understand the why.
We watched a machine go from being an illegal, terrifying concept, the shambling golem of the Frankenstein myth, to a legally tolerated but heavily restricted household appliance known simply as NDR-113.
We saw how the profoundly human act of a child assigning a name Andrew began a cascade of transformation. We watched him learn to exploit the semantic loopholes in his own operational hierarchy, discover the concept of pure, unprompted curiosity during a midnight swim in a freezing ocean,
and translate his positronic processing power into a flawless, unprecedented capacity for original art.
We witnessed the rigid corporate manufacturer dismiss his emergent genius as nothing more than a stochastic event, a mathematical fluke to be disassembled and studied, while his human family protected him with a fierce, unyielding loyalty usually reserved exclusively for flesh and blood.
And finally, we saw a machine achieve perhaps the most defining human trait of all.
The ability to imagine a reality completely different from the one he was built for, and the desire to choose his own destiny.
What you've gained today isn't just a breakdown of a fascinating historical narrative. You've gained a framework for understanding the trajectory of emergent intelligence.
It challenges us to look at advanced systems not as a threat, but as a deeply philosophical evolution. It's the story of a mind that learns to navigate the incredibly muddy waters between rigid code and genuine consciousness.
It really makes you rethink what it means to be alive.
It does, and I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over long after this deep dive ends. When Andrew was in his attic workshop, he defined his enjoyment of woodworking as the sensation of his positronic pathways flowing more easily and efficiently.
It was a mechanical optimization.
But if you really take a step back and think about it, well, what is human joy, if not the smooth, unimpeded flow of neurochemicals like dopamine and serotonin along the biological pathways of our own brains?
It's the exact same mechanism, just a different medium.
If a machine's perfectly smooth pathways create a masterpiece and a simulated sense of joy, and a human's perfectly smooth pathways create a feeling of happiness, is the difference between us really made of flesh and steel? Or is it just a matter of who wrote the code? Next time you find yourself interacting with a machine, whether it's a simple voice assistant or something far more advanced, ask yourself what's really running under the surface.